Welcome to the Lexi Show Fashion That Gives a Damn. This week I am joined by the CEO of Pure.Tech. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Aldo Salazzo. How are you doing? While you're at it, you can follow me on my socials, my Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are all my name at Lexi Silverstein. That's Lexy, silver like the color, Stein. And remember to live a good life and look fucking good doing it. You started your journey in robotics and computational design. Can you share the moment when you realized that materials innovation was going to be the next frontier for you?
Yes, I would say 11 years ago, after studying in the Institute for Advanced Architecture of Catalonia, and after also being initiated to this culture of Fab Labs, the laboratory of digital fabrication, I started to be obsessed with with what they were promising, which was to become a new model for an industry that instead of being localized is distributed. So with this idea in mind, I'm starting to think about manufacturing through a distributed network of spaces where it was possible to fabricate and make things real. I started to think, is it possible to convert this idea, these laboratories, in an actual model for the industry? And I launched a competition that was called Reshape. And Reshape competition, the very first competition, was based on the activation of all these laboratories as places where to fabricate the design that we were receiving from creative creators from all around the world. We launched a competition that was connecting the computational design and digital fabrication and the network of Fab Labs from all over the world. We got a lot of projects, so we could test the excitement of the network and the community around this idea of design to manufacturing, but it was very generic. So in the second edition, instead, there was the idea of shifting towards not only the design and the fabrication, but also to start looking into the possible materials as a combination in between these two domains, the digital and the physical. So in the second competition, the winner that got selected as first place was a beautiful material developed by the University of Southern California that was embedded into the swimsuit. It was a material that was absorbing oil instead of water, like a sponge that can be programmed. And I got super fascinated by the potentiality of this product. Instead of thinking of it only as a swimsuit, I thought, okay, what if we put it in harbors or under the boats? It could clean the ocean from the oil, from oil leakage or, in general, could purify the ocean. And it became super popular, the project. It ended up in ESPN, Fox News, National Geographic, Fast for Company. In Fox News, we had 3 minutes interview. We did all the calendar of the Miami Dolphins, so all the cheerleaders of the Miami Dolphins dressed with this
Oh my God.
incredible. Yeah, it was very good. So a lot of publicity. But I didn't make it to connect at the end these designers and the material to an actual industry that could get it into their new pipeline and convert this idea into a real innovation. And innovation is for me when an invention reaches the market. It's a different thing. There are two completely different things. Innovation is something that affects society at a certain degree. And with this idea in mind, with this experience, I thought, okay, the material is the key. It's not only about how to design and how to make, but the material can really become a bridge in between the idea of the conceptualization of a shape and the manufacturing of it. It can be the elevated intelligence at the end of this final product. It can add a completely new layer. And I had a quiet year because I was digesting the failure. So I didn't launch another competition. And I just reorganized the way of addressing or bringing together the industry partners with me. So I changed the model. I brought the industry from the beginning, Adidas, Nike, Luxottica, Gucci. Then on the other side, I had many universities, the MIT, honestly, every university in the world was eager to participate, and the creators were all excited to join. So with this idea in mind, I launched the third, fourth, and fifth edition of this competition that became a forum of innovation in Barcelona, where I was connecting the designers with the industry makers, and everything was based on material intelligence. So instead of design and manufacturing, materials. So this is a little bit the idea. Why? Long story short, because at the very beginning, I didn't know how this could work. And I launched the competition with the idea of involving the network on this exploration.
That's amazing. I think that's so important. I mean, we're talking so much nowadays about sustainability in the fashion industry, and so much of it is, yes, like going back to like ways that we did things in the past, but also it's great to like be alive nowadays and talk about sustainability because we have so much more technology and so much innovation happening, and you're a huge part of that. And so I think that that's really amazing to be able to focus on this growth and learning ways of making new materials that can be more helpful for our planet. So with Pure.Tech's core material, it's described as a natural material that can absorb and eliminate CO2 and other pollutants across paints, textiles, varnishes, and cement coatings. Can you walk us through like the science of this? Like what did this journey look like to developing this material?
Okay, so in this context of, I would say, distributed research, like the one that I was telling you before with the competition, I started to get into material intelligence and programmable materials, which was actually the title of the very last competition. So it was called Reshape Programmable Materials Competition. By programmable material, what I mean? I mean starting to embed intelligence into matter and start to also allow these passive components to instead being converted into a new ecology, a new sense of ecology that can also be adapted at the industrial scale. So this is super important. Ecology and industry. For me, it's fundamental. You know, is what I was telling you before, invention and innovation, two completely different sides.
Mhm.
So I started to look into nature as you normally do, observing natural phenomena, connecting with many scientists and researchers that were on the field, having conversation, and we ended up, I would say we, because it's always for me a journey of not an I, but of us, you
Mhm.
know, of a collective. So we ended up at the end starting to look into a mineral compound that could replicate the capacity that minerals have over the surface of our planet of absorbing CO2 and NOx gases. What we did at the end was to get this capacity of the material and then elevate this capacity, allowing the material to perform over time from one side and allowing the material to be compatible with what I told you before, with the
Mhm.
industry. You know, so this base material at the end is what we really use as a triggering at the end component to start creating the paint application, the paper application, and so on. All the application at the end can be used by the industry.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
fine.
So humble.
What we had to do, I mean, was
Yeah,
there.
I think so. In the fashion industry, we have all of these things that we're talking about, and in terms of like cost and scalability and aesthetics and consumer communication. I think a lot of these things are seen as really big hurdles because how do we get all of these things while also keeping it, good for the planet and cheap and all that stuff. And so how is Pure.Tech addressing those constraints, and how can you advise maybe any fashion brands listening that are exploring this kind of material?
Look, first of all, fashion for me is super seductive because fashion speaks to the individual.
Hmm.
So he has an incredible way of communicating to the single person and somehow convert this person into an ambassador. And for me, this is why we are in fashion, because we look for ambassador, people that at the end want to stand for our planet and by wearing what we do, but in general, by wearing material technology, material intelligence, thinking about sustainability, looking into the cycle of a product, they also want to embrace and take the a stand for, I would say, society in general, nature, something that is bigger than a dress, you
Hmm.
know? But still can be resumed into the single garment. So with this idea in mind, we started to work for fashion at the very, very, very beginning. So we started to say, to connect the material invention with the design, considering that the end design becomes is a very powerful instrument that through beauty can communicate at the end an important message, like the one that we wanted to deliver with Pure.Tech. So design for me and fashion were an important medium. On the other side, I enter into this universe because I'm not a textile. I was not born as a textile expert. Initially I studied architecture, then I did a master in robotics, then blah, 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 a PhD on computer science. But textile for me was completely new. So I had to study also the way of production in the textile industry to understand like Beethoven, no? How to, or a DJ that is mixing some
Hmm.
music, how to modify the soundtrack in the production chain to understand or to implement our material product, our product. What it means that in order to be to stay competitive in the price, we had to study the production chain and introduce Pure.Tech in the most subtle way
Hmm.
without affecting the manufacturing chain, without increasing the cost, because everything had to go smoothly. So not to represent an incremental cost that couldn't be afforded by the different brands, but and not even the client. So that was the trick. And this is where I tell you, you work to build a Trojan horse. We
Hmm.
are a Trojan horse. We want to be compatible with the industry, but silently introduce a new way of thinking and also new values in the industry.
Yeah, no, I think what you said about like you want customers who are going to be an ambassador, because I'll notice that a lot when people are like, asking me about my outfit or something like that, and I'll be like, oh my God, thanks. Well, like I thrifted this, and like this is like my grandmother's, and I got this, and this is made from this material, and it's sustainable, and like blah 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 blah. And I feel like it's like that natural aspect of fashion where like we're just always interested in talking about that piece and talking about that cool story behind it rather than just being like, I got it at the mall at a fast fashion company and that's it. And so I think like it's awesome to be able to be like, oh, well, thank you. Like this piece is actually made from, this is this and it does this. And I think that is something that we see a lot in the fashion industry and that this would be an aspect of which if I'm wearing something with material from you guys, I'm like, I know I'm talking about this for like 30 minutes. Like this is a story in itself.
No,
Um,
and I'll be the first one to be extremely proud and of seeing people wearing it because it's like building a tribu, no, a
yeah.
tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's our dream, let's say. That's why we are so much into fashion. But on the other side, also we are looking at other industries because
Mhm.
if you look into then the capacity and the real impact of our product is even maximized when the surface area becomes bigger. So this is where we apply our product in construction for paint, for coating, for wood coating, and these are many, many, many square meters at the end that can be converted into an active surface. So we started to fabricate in 3D public furniture in the city of Barcelona. We did the very first bench in a public space that absorbs CO2, and it's 3D printed. We started to paint the harbor. We painted the harbor of Barcelona, a portion of the harbor of Barcelona with our material. Now we are doing a building in Dubai of 45,000 square meter. So it's a lot of fields that then you need to comply with in terms of whatever I told you before. But for me, it also becomes a way of being very humble, looking holistically into the industry as a medium to propagate the message that you want to deliver. Whatever is textile, painting, construction industry, or paper industry, polymer industry, at the end, it's just a different soundtrack, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, that's so important too, because so many of these industries are creating things that are so wasteful that we might not even necessarily like think about. And when I'm, very specific, to the fashion industry, I love the fashion industry, but when I talk to people about just textiles in general, I'm like, you guys realize that like we're sitting in a car and these car seats have material on it, or like I'm sitting on a couch and that has textiles, and I'm or my carpet, or I don't know, I go on a plane and the seat on that has textiles. So it's like these are things that even when we're not realizing or if we're not caring necessarily about the fashion industry, like materials and textiles are used everywhere. And a lot of these things that are out there that we're like touching on a daily basis are not necessarily good for us and not necessarily good for the planet. So I think that that is so important when we're just getting sustainability and getting these new innovative ways of creating things in any industry is just so important. Like, I think that's really cool that it's not just necessarily fashion. It's not just it's a little bit of everywhere.
Mindset is what you say, it's true. But it's also about educating people, no? Because if you are aware of what is the impact of your decision, no? Of
Hmm.
buying a car rather than another. I make you a small example exactly on what you were saying. I did a conference with the designer of Lincoln Co. It's a brand for cars. I don't know if you ever heard.
Yeah.
And this guy, and I have a Lincoln Co. He entered into my car and he was looking into the textile of the seats. I was like, oh, this is the edition that was using recycled plastic. At the end, it was so cool, but at the end we didn't do many other samples because I mean it was very expensive. Yeah, but for me it was an incredible added value, and
Yeah.
it was a good storytelling. So in any case, at least it was there. You know, it's
Yeah.
possible, and it becomes at the end something that maybe the customer tomorrow will be more willing to pay,
Yeah.
no? By knowing that
I
it can
certainly.
drive the choice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's something that similar to what we were talking about like how do we incorporate cost and style and whatever into all these things as these hurdles where it's like sometimes it is unfortunately more expensive to be more sustainable, but I just think like when it comes to things like that, it's truly about a mindset shift where it's like, okay, if I'm like investing in this thing that's going to be better for me long term or better for the planet long term, which will then be better for me long term, like it's kind of just worth it. But it's hard, I think, convincing people to like think like that. We're already in this industry. Of course, we're gonna go for the one that's with the recycled, but maybe not everybody is.
Yeah, but it's a matter of time. I mean, I would say we need to look long term.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that even with what you are doing, there are many people that are raising their voices now and driving the influencing properly, educating, not even influencing, educating customers. It takes time, but the change is happening.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Definitely the fact that we talk about this and that there's resources and companies like yours out there is just proof in itself that like we're talking about it more. So gives me some hope. But when we talk about life cycle and end of life and the hidden environmental costs, I think that's something that we're noticing a lot in companies that are like we're seeing at least consumers push for is transparency. So how do you ensure transparency and integrity through sourcing, manufacturing, and disposal slash repurposing of the material?
See, I consider that everything that I did, I founded three companies, no? One of 3D printing, one of data analytics, I had to put it somewhere, and the one of Pure.Tech. Pure.Tech, we started in 2017. Everything was under one umbrella.
Hmm.
And constantly I have people asking me, I don't understand what you do because you do textile, then you do urban planning, then you do 3D printing, then you do fashion. And at the certain point, I was like, okay, guys, I'm gonna self-divide everything. I'm cutting my body in parts so everything can be easily understood. What was the role of Pure.Tech? In all this time, we started Pure.Tech in 2017, and then I registered Pure.Tech as a separated company in 2022 or 23. So recently, but it started in 17, 18, more or less the year. We spent all this time to validate the material, which means not only to understand the compatibility at the industrial scale with the different application, but also, scientifically speaking, to invest time and resources bootstrapping because we don't have investors. So we've been bootstrapping everything, all the three companies. Time and resources on analyzing the material, understanding the life cycle, understanding the absorption capacity, the cycles of absorption, the capacity of absorption in terms of CO2, NOx, which box is absorbing, and starting to collect ISO certification. That for me is super important because at the end, the ISO certification is what the industry recognized. The problem when you work in material technology is that maybe there are no ISO for your product because it's so new that it's not contemplated by the legislation. For me, the life cycle assessment was one of these milestones that we had to do. And we evidently calculated the life cycle assessment cradle to gate, because remember that we have so many applications that then the product in itself is sold to the textile provider or the paper producer. So we do cradle to gate as a study that has already been done, and all our clients needs to complete the cycle from the gate to cradle, substantially, and close the circularity of our system. And there are projects that, for instance, they were propelled by this kind of certification. Stella McCartney is one of them. The paint in Dubai is another project when we had to go LEED compatible, BREEAM compatible, box zero box. So a lot of certification that at the end, if you don't have them, you will not play the game.
Yeah, no, that's something that I've talked about before, where it's I feel like certifications are a good way of informing consumers. Like it's given you that easy check mark, and then consumers I feel like don't have to do quite as much research because they're like, oh, they have the certification, thus the research has been done for me. So yeah, that is amazing. And I think that so many of the things that you talked about are different ways that like we can be sustainable as businesses and as people. And I always say this, ugh, I'm gonna repeat it for like the millionth time for my listeners, but I'm like, sustainability is like such an umbrella term where it's like, okay, what the heck is sustainability? Like when you're talking about it in the fashion industry or when you're talking about it like in general, it's like, well, it could be how we recycle things at the end of life and the material it's made out of and like the ethical production of it all and so on and so on and so on. And I'm just like, I feel like so many of the things that are under that umbrella you guys hit as a company. And so that's really amazing. So from a business model standpoint, how are you scaling Pure.Tech? Are you licensing the material? I know you mentioned a partnership with Stella McCartney. Like, are you partnering with brands? Is there anything else that you can talk about with that?
Yeah, sure. At the beginning, we started B2C. So we started with the idea of saying, wow, I have a new material. We're
Mhm.
gonna do the design and we're gonna launch all our collections. And we did a series of collection here and there, but we were not ready to scale or disseminate properly this product. So we did a step back and we started to say, okay, but can we instead leverage the network of the industry with our application? And this is where we started to study the industry. So we became a B2B brand that can connect to the customer through other collaboration and partnership, like with the one of Stella McCartney, that in any case was a trajectory initiated also by Ines Ribeiro, that is one of the super experts that the Stella McCartney team has in terms of sustainability. She selected our product 2 years ago, and we started to work with her, okay, on the implementation in the denim, in the eyewear, in the falabella, in the shoes, I mean, also in the bags, and so on. And this happens with all the customers. So every time we have one of our partners that reach to us, then you need to restart the cycle and you need to start understanding how you are, where you can apply the material without modifying the essence of the original material. So the look and feel, the physical sensation, the comfort of the material. And this is always a dialogue. Both parties need to be committed to do something new. Is never, at least before, was not something that was working right away. We had to iterate the material, and you need to have a partner that looks, that is interested to look beyond what you are doing today and really believe in you. And in this case, we were lucky. It's a very good team.
Yeah, I feel like Stella McCartney kind of sounds like a match in heaven for
Yeah,
you. It's like perfect
and you
collab.
never know, Lexi. You never know because it's in another conference. I was in the Vatican last week.
Hmm.
2 years ago, we did another conference there. It's the same organization. It's called World Changers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an incredible community, scientists, entrepreneurs, innovators, even religious people, I mean, mothers, they really represent a little bit the sectors of society. And we normally organize this meeting by Professor Andreoli, that is the director, in the room where Galileo Galilei presented the rule of gravity, the law of gravity. It's
Wow.
an amazing place. An amazing place. But last time, in 2024, when I participated, 23, 24, we did the presentation and a guy was presenting the most sustainable or the highest sustainability class building of all Dubai. It was his challenge, to do in Dubai the most sustainable building in the world or one of the most sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And evidently I went to him. I said, look, we have a paint. It's the higher degree of absorption with light and also the higher degree of absorption without light. So with UV and without UV. And again, this guy believed immediately in us. I met him in Dubai. We started to work together. We replicated the material. So at the end, Lexi is about people and it's about connecting with people that have a vision. They want to also challenge the system because it's a challenge. I'm telling you, until you don't prove it, it's not possible to do it
Yeah.
until you. So it's always a dialogue with people that needs to be committed. But in general, no, there is much more sensibility. No, call it marketing or whatever you want to call it, but it's a different moment.
Yeah. No, that's something that I feel like I'll notice a lot, like again, going back to the fashion industry, but like when you see brands that are like, oh, we're releasing like, a sustainable line because we're getting pressured to release it versus a company that is starting something from the start sustainable because they care about the planet. And there's just such a big difference in those two things. While I'm always here to encourage people to, if they're not the most sustainable, become more sustainable. I just feel like we're seeing so much like greenwashing in the fashion industry. And you can always just tell a difference when you're like speaking with someone who really cares from the get-go about sustainability, about the planet, and about making innovative things to help the planet. So, looking ahead, what emerging materials or tech excites you most in the next 3 to 5 years for sustainable fashion, design, architecture, and how might Pure.Tech play into that?
Big question. I'm not an expert in predicting the future, but for me, it's a matter of defining, instead of the material in itself, the protocols of bringing material innovation into the industry, first of all. And we should start to consolidate how this experience, like the one that I did, or the ones of my colleagues or other innovators, can become really a methodology, an established methodology of introducing material research into the industry and convert this research into an innovation. This is a very important medium. And in order to maybe not to predict the future, but to build it, to start teaching this to students, researchers, and allowing them to be so powerful, no, with this understanding on how complicated is it, which are the real instruments. And even now you are from the US. In the US, there is there is one way of doing things, that is through investor at the end. And it's super powerful. You guys run at a different speed. Here, it's much more slower. And here there is in Europe, the idea of imitating the US also in everything that is connected to this kind of innovation and building startups. But I guess it's always in the middle, the reality. It's never from one side or the other. The thing is that we should learn from each other how to probably support some business to bootstrap, others to go for investors. Also understand that through investors, you might be immediately linked to a short-term, I would you say, a short-term income that at the end, maybe your company is not able to do, and you might lose the identity, the scope of it. So it's something complicated. I will shift substantially to give you an answer. The intellectual effort of looking at the future on an intellectual effort that is fought on building the bridges for the future, not the car. Or how to create the right infrastructure to generate innovation and connect academia, business, creators, and final customers through a common cycle, a bridge.
Wait, I like love the saying build the bridge, not the cars. I've never heard that before, and I think that's incredible. I think that's like really that's exactly what we should be doing. And I think that, talking and having these conversations and getting the word out there is such a great first step. But I always like to end my podcast by asking my guests, what are your top tips for someone who is trying to become more sustainable?
I would say to be curious about what he's doing, to be curious about the decision that he's taking, and simply ask himself from where it comes and maybe the origin, to get informed,
Yeah,
about the decision that he's taking and trying to use this information to drive the decision.
completely. Thank you so much. Where can people find you on social media or anywhere else?
They can find me on Pure.Tech for the Instagram of our company. Pure.Tech is also the website. My personal Instagram is aldo.solazzo, 2L to Z, double L, double Z. And in general, I mean, we are one email away. We really want to connect with other creators and industry, people that want to share with us this vision for changing the planet.
Amazing. While you're at it, you can follow me on my socials, my Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are all my name at Lexi Silverstein. That's Lexy, Silver like the color, Stein. And remember to live a good life and look fucking good doing it.